Hello, my name is Maria McNamara and I'm the CEO of Advance.org. Today I'm joined by Minister Victor Dominello, the Minister for Customer Services in the New South Wales Government. Hello, Minister.
Hi, Maria.
It's great to see you. We've had a relationship that now goes back, about 6 years?
Absolutely. You don't look a second older.
Yeah, see, this is going to be a great conversation. Minister, the reason that I wanted to invite you into this conversation is because you're doing something that governments around the world and organisations around the world, and especially in Australia, are turning their attention to, and that's the transformation of products and service delivery to their customers, both to take costs out, but more importantly, to improve the quality of services and the experience of their customers and users. So before we get to what it is you're doing now, what was the preparation for this adventure? Because it didn't just happen. You spent quite a bit of time first in data and then understanding what was happening in other ecosystems before you chose to begin this work.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think it really started when I was a lawyer. And I remember I was a commercial litigator, so I remember being involved in a really complex fraud case. And we literally subpoenaed everything that moved. And this was in the 90s. And back then, I had access to an Excel spreadsheet. And, traditionally what you normally do is you get pen and paper out and you try and pull the documents, read it, and you work through a chronology. What I did one night is just put all the basically chronology into an Excel spreadsheet and did a magic thing called sort. And then all of a sudden I got the chronology, not based on what the witnesses' version of events were, but what the documents version of events were. So, I had the actual facts based on documents, and then the witnesses, how should we say, scratchy recollection. So it provided a great cross-examination tool to say, well, hold it, you said it was blue sky, but the weather forecast said X. And we won the case. So, that really embedded the power of data for me. And then I got into government, Aboriginal affairs, realised there was not much data architecture around all of the policy work we were doing. Went into better regulation, which is another area where we had to put a lot of effort into data. And then, I guess I'm here now in Department of Customer Service, where data, digital, and customer is front and centre of everything we do.
So talk to me about your experience with data, because you set up the Data Analytics Centre in New South Wales, and that's been a really important foundation stone for the work you're doing now. Yeah,
again, the Data Analytics Centre was the first of its kind in the country and one of the leads in the world when it comes to bringing all the data together in a safe way and secure way. And that's because I got frustrated inside a government that agencies weren't talking to one another. And that's what you normally see inside a government. Every agency has their deep silo of expertise, and they guard that ferociously as they should. They should be very proud of their deep expertise. But the problem is that, you can have these deep areas, but if there's no cross-ventilation where people are sharing, in subject to privacy and security, well then, that's where you have disjointed services, suboptimal decisions. So we set up the Data Analytics Centre to say, look, if we got wicked problems inside a government that we need to solve, it's not going to be solved one silo at a time. It's got to be a whole of government lens. And that's where the DAC really started its journey. And it really came to the fore in the response to the pandemic, because on day 2 of the pandemic, I got the DAC, I got all basically the data sheets from each agency to come together for the first time ever, sharing their own respective dashboards, their insights, and seeing how we can then utilise the community of data, again, aggregated, anonymised to ensure privacy, to get better outcomes.
That must be one of the untold stories of this pandemic, which is your use of data. Because when you look at your response in New South Wales compared to the response of other states and indeed other countries, there doesn't appear to be the same resource available, or at least the ability to harness that data and analyse it for better decision making?
Well, yeah, that I think that is true, and I think, Maria, to your earlier point, like, we didn't start this journey at the pandemic. Like, it takes time to build up this capability. The DAC's been in play now for about 4 or 5 years, so because a lot of the barriers to sharing of information in a private and a secure way are cultural. It's not like it's hard to share information, but the cultural settings are in place. So, we built up those relationships over 4 or 5 years now, where we can now, flick the switch and we're into fifth gear pretty quickly. So, we were fortunate that we started this journey some time ago.
So there's two things. This data, is it also available to members in the private sector? Are they able to work with government to unlock the power of the data for better decision making in terms of the products and services they take to the market?
Yes, and again, this is a journey that really does not have a destination. Sorry, that has a destination that we will never reach. It's like digital transformation. It's a journey. It's not a destination, because we're constantly evolving. So we're opening up as much data as we humanly can to make sure that we provide it to the market to help us provide better products and service delivery. So, for example, we opened up at a very early stage the data relating to infection rates at a suburban level and a postcode level, indeed. So to this day, I think we're providing more open data to the market in relation to COVID, for example, than anybody else, and at a micro level more than anybody else. And that means the startup community can go out there, get the data, and create their own products and services, and that in turn creates more jobs and moves the economy forward. So I'm a really keen advocate of open data because it goes to trust. There's privacy, security, transparency, and ethics. Open data goes to transparency.
So you talked about privacy, and I won't make that the subject of this conversation because that's a whole other conversation, but I will talk about cybersecurity because it is something that still has to find its feet and raise its profile amongst businesses and the community more widely. You've made a real effort with your cybersecurity so that you have, that you're constantly under attack because, you're sitting on assets that others want. What's your approach and what is your suggestion to both businesses small and large based on your experience?
Well, my approach is leadership. Unfortunately, in most areas of reform, you need somebody to champion it. Otherwise, it just goes to the back of the bus. So we're determined here in New South Wales to take a real leadership stance on cyber because, as you said, Maria, we are gathering more and more information, and it makes us more and more, in many ways, our profile has lifted. So we have to make sure that as we accelerating through that digital journey, we strengthen our cyber position. We're putting 240, we've got a $1.6 billion digital restart fund. Of that, 240 million over 3 years is dedicated or earmarked to cyber, which really gives us strength, not just here in Australia, but we'll lead the Southern Hemisphere with 240 over 3 mil over 3 years, but a genuine world leader when it comes to cyber. But then we're working with industry, such as we've got the task force on sovereign procurement. We've got a standards task force that New South Wales is leading, and we've got great industry players there, working with government to say, how do we harmonise and standardise cyber standards right across the board? We can then, give that to the feds so that they can then, say to the world, we're a world leader, thanks to the New South Wales government. But, beyond that, we're getting other states coming on board as well. And then there's the regionalisation approach to cyber, it can't be all the eggs in the Sydney basket. So we're already making announcements in relation to cyber muscle over in Bathurst, for example, where we've got spatial services, and with more announcements coming downstream. So, everything we're doing in the cyberspace requires industry involvement because they're at the cutting edge, but we need that partnership.
And so when you're looking at customer services more broadly, what all of this data and what the security enables you to do is offer better service, is begin your journey of transforming the services confidently so that you can serve the people of New South Wales in a much better way. So you began with Service New South Wales, which is a world leader, and that was a precursor to the sort of transformation we're seeing now. What can you tell us from your experience with Service New South Wales?
If I had to talk about what is the secret sauce or the magic behind service, it's about putting the EQ at the front and the IQ at the back, and then you have that alchemy that creates the magic. So it's easy for governments to go out there and say, all right, we're going to have a world-class service front door like we've created with Service New South Wales. And all we're going to do is get an old agency like we used to have, the RMS or the RTO or whatever it was, and just put a new logo over the top and say, now we're going to have world-class service delivery. That doesn't work because it doesn't change the culture. So what we did is we started literally from scratch and said, look, if we really truly want to put service at the heart of what we're doing, let's go out there and find people that enjoy serving people. Because there are some people that, quite frankly, should be behind a desk, should not be near people, that should be, doing their own thing. So we went out to the market, got people, and brought them in, and then got the best, people skills within government, combined it, and then we said, all right, now let's build some digital platforms so that when I'm serving a customer, I can do it fast because I've got the digital smarts behind me. And that was the beginning of our journey. And then we've evolved with new product and service delivery on top of that.
So let's talk about those digital services, because when you look at the website for New South Wales, you know very clearly and very quickly that you're entering the New South Wales portal, and it's simple, it's clear. It has the same attractiveness in terms of the user experience as the one out of the UK government. And I think what's really important is that we know that this is the place to go when you've got questions. So that single entry point for services out of New South Wales, obviously a lot cheaper to do it across a digital platform than in person, but you still offer the in-person, you still offer the mail. It's not as though you've killed off those options for those who want them, but your service experience digitally is much better.
Yeah, spot on. And in the digital transformation journey, I've got to keep reminding myself that there are a lot of people out there that are not digitally savvy, and that's the reality. We've all got different levels of maturity, digital maturity. So my mum, for example, I keep thinking about, how will my mum access government services if everything goes online? And that's why when we set up Service New South Wales, the very first thing we did is set up the digital kiosk. So you get a concierge at the front door. They say, "G'day, sir, madam, what service do you need?" "Oh, look, I need to renew my license." "Okay, you can go and see the young man or the gentleman or the lady at the counter, or alternatively, I can just walk you across to a kiosk, a digital kiosk, and I can walk you through and show you how to do it online, so that way you can do it at home." i.e., we help people in their own personal digital maturation. And that's critical because not everyone is going to be feeling comfortable to do it online. So it's an important inclusion piece in providing digital services.
And then when you're looking at the service delivery over years, a service will gunk up. There'll be legislative change, there'll be some amendments, there'll be this, there'll be that, there'll be different ideas, and it becomes overly complex. And you mentioned the digital license. So what sort of, I'm assuming that what you've done with a lot of your programs, if you've mapped the user journey, you've seen all the pressure points, and you've over time streamlined them to make it a really simple experience. What's your experience been there, just in terms of understanding how difficult it is for people? And then what's your experience been with your exemplars of the transformation? What sort of responses are you getting?
Oh, look, it's been overwhelming. Like most of in fact, all the digital products that I personally roll out, I insist that I have a sentiment check. So I've got two things I absolutely insist on all digital products. And I drive my department crazy with this stuff, but I insist on it. Otherwise, I don't sign off on it. And the first is I want a sentiment check, a simple thumbs up, thumbs down sentiment. I just want to gauge, are we in the ballpark? Are we just, I don't need a survey, a deep dive. That takes too much time. People don't have the time. Just happy, sad. That's it. And then an engagement score. So of all the people that are using the service, the digital service, how many are actually engaging with us to give the thumbs up, thumbs down? So they're the two things. And then with the provision that they can give us feedback if they want to. So I'm constantly looking to see the feedback we're getting, the engagement score, and the sentiment. And honestly, Maria, for example, the digital driver's license, I think the last time I checked, our satisfaction score is in the 96, 97%. Wow. It's just extraordinary. In fact, I don't think I've got a digital product yet in the market that is less than 94%.
That's excellent.
Now, if you go to the private sector and said, you've got a product, you're actually testing it, and the score is at 94%, you're doing handstands. And we're talking about products sometimes that are really complicated, that are easy to confuse with other players in the market. So, for example, with the check-in service, some people are using the check-in service, but they're having a great service, but sometimes the QR reader doesn't work because the vendor doesn't have the service reader. So they're saying, and then they think they reflect poorly on us, where it's got nothing to do with us. Yep. So, you're even weighting that in. So notwithstanding all the other problems, or like, the fuel check app, people might be angry with the price of the petrol. It's got nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So that might adversely impact on the score, but even those scores are at 95, 96%. So it is really comforting to know that we're delivering good product. But the best thing about it is, because we're getting the comments and we're getting the feedback in real time, if there's a problem, we can see it. I don't need a deep dive or a survey every 6 months or 12 months. I can be agile. So, for example, the check-in feature now, I was looking at it this morning and some of the feedback. And again, it's all anonymized, so I don't know who's giving the feedback. In fact, I give myself my own feedback when I do, because I'm a secret CEO type thing, just to make sure my feedback's coming back on the loop. And some of the feedback now is saying, can we have a provision for dependents? So I'm just going to pick up the phone, speak to my secretary. Hey, this is a good. Can we do this feature? There seems to be a growing demand for it. So this is agile government at its best.
And in terms of your closeness to the market, I mean, you talked about picking up the phone to the secretary. What I'm hearing from you is that this work is being done inside government, inside your team. This is not work that's outsourced, because you've got the skills and the capability inside the organisation.
Absolutely, and I'm really, really, really proud of the team. Like they have built enormous capacity. And again, somebody was asking me the other day about the border check. So when the Victorian second wave appeared, we were in our headspace in New South Wales was, how do we open up more of the economy? So we were absolutely on a path to opening everything up. Then all of a sudden we had a problem with the Victorian border. We had to rapidly close down that border. Picked up the phone, literally on the Monday morning, gave the brief to the department and said, you've got to give me a digital border pass for the Victorian border. And I need it, I can't have it in 2 months. I can't even have it in 2 weeks. Like, there's an outbreak and people are coming across the border. We'll have a second outbreak if we're not careful. They got the border pass up literally within 36 hours.
That's outstanding.
And let me say this, like, it wasn't perfect and we've constantly tweaked it, but they got it up in 36 hours. Now, there is no chance they would have been able to do that if they didn't have that capacity that you're talking about.
Well, I think they're close enough to the business, the work that needs to be done. They've got the capacity, they're able to respond, and you are like any other digital business, which is you are in control. Yeah. It's outstanding. What I find amazing also is your shift away from PDFs. So, the straight through processing is something close to my heart. I only want to tell you once. I don't want to keep telling you.
Absolutely. I'm sick of the tell us once approach. Again, informed consent. The PDFs, like, they drive me mad. If you enjoy paper, do origami. But if you want a true digital experience, it's got to be end to end. I coin PDFs as a paper sandwich because you can have the emails. Emails is digital, but if you're putting a bit of paper as an attachment, that's a paper sandwich, and that's rubbish. Nobody enjoys that. So but this is the transformation we're on. Like, people that think that PDFs are good, it is just a small step up from paper, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We have to rapidly get out of that, and because it is a huge risk in terms of cyber. So
I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, because of course, if you don't have people keying information, if you don't have people doing the job of machines, and machines are doing the job of machines, what happens to the people? Are you retrenching staff or are you reskilling them? Reskilling them. And I gave an address the other day about, what does service look like potentially in 10, 20 years? To your point, like, if everybody has got digital maturity, if I've done my job and there are no more paper forms, if I've done my job and there is a truly tell us once approach, if I've done my job and you can do everything online, then, why do we need people? That's reality. Well, the answer is this. Even now, we don't understand each other that well. We need to invest in our people to improve our EQ skills. So we've rolled out a new product in service where we're training the staff now to pick up on cues in relation to mental health. So in the bushfires, people would come in, and it was obviously when they were obvious to see when they were distressed, they were crying. In COVID, people are under enormous pressure, enormous mental anguish. So we're now training the staff to say, look, have a bit of a dialogue with them. Don't just say, how can I do your license? Have a bit of a heart-to-heart discussion with them. So if you're picking up any clues in relation to mental anguish, you can gently say, hey, look, here's a great support service. So in many ways, it becomes far, far more than just a simple transaction. It becomes a relationship, and that is critical to service. Like, ultimately, if technology is there not to serve the people and help improve the quality of life or reduce suffering, then quite frankly, technology is meaningless. And in order to do that, you need that human interface to help in that journey. That's outstanding. Often when you're looking at the sort of transformation that you're doing, you're having to shift your focus in terms of the platforms that you choose. Many of the platforms in big organizations are, large, institutional, expensive, difficult to move. And yet, to be able to do what you want to do, you need platforms that you can pay for on a credit card, that you can swap in and out, that are robust. And you also don't want to be stuck. So what's your thinking and what's your experience in terms of the reshaping of your platform strategy? Well, for me, the platform strategy has to, well, for starters, we've got to have diversity in the ecosystem. So, there's obviously the big players that can provide the big platforms that are tested and robust, but equally, we've got a very vibrant startup community that we need to invest in to build capacity in.
and where the big players need to partner with the small ones to lift them up as well. Because, constantly there are new products, new platforms coming to the market, and we just can't be wedded to one, pay a huge license fee, and then get lazy and think, they'll do all the heavy lifting. We'll just pay the fee and just roll things out. So, I am very much aware that, diversity is key in delivery. And when it comes to platforms, making sure that there's a lot of interoperability in relation to it, so that, that people can plug in. So in many ways, it's the taxonomy, that's the data architecture that's critical in the design, so that when people do plug in, they can.
So what I'm really interested in now is the whole concept of, two parts to it: one, procurement, and two, priorities. So if you're a high growth or if you're a startup looking for your first customer, if you're a high growth company that has gone overseas, an Australian founder who's had to go overseas for their first customer, or if you're an Australian company overseas who wants to come home, what is the best way? How do you procure in a way that makes it possible for them to get their first customer? Nobody wants a grant in a lot of cases. They want a customer. It's a better relationship.
Yeah, agreed. So we got buy.nsw.gov.au, and just recently I launched I call it a lightning strike task force, because I don't want a task force to go for 6 months or 12 months. They drive me crazy. So I got myself a Minister Tudor Hope in relation to procurement, because we've got the 1.6, and we want to make sure that we use the 1.6 not just to get more, uplift our digital skills and delivery, but to use the 1.6 as an enabler, an economic enabler for the people of our great state. So I got some leaders in the New South Wales ecosystem to come onto the task force, and I'm taking the recommendations up to Cabinet as we speak, because we want to make sure that it is easier, particularly for Australian SMEs, to navigate through at pace and with clarity in relation to not just the 1.6, but the broader IT spend across the state.
So let's talk priorities now. You've reformed the way that you choose your program of work. You've reformed the way that decisions are made about how the money is distributed. You've got the drip feed model. Talk to me about that, because that is quite radical, and it's very different to the old days where a lump of money was given and you didn't see anything for 6 years and you hoped it worked.
Yeah, well, the old model's the waterfall model, and I think it was aptly described, because what happens is you go out, comes off a cliff, and 6 years later there's a whole lot of bubble and froth and foam at the bottom, and if you survive, that's great. But it was a terrible experience if you survived. But sometimes it just ended up in disaster at the bottom of the cliff, at the bottom of the waterfall. And that doesn't work. And particularly now when things are changing so fast. You can understand how, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when, IT was in many ways still nascent, you'd say, well, this is new. We need to build this out slowly, like you're building the Opera House over 6 years or 10 years. But, there's nothing faster than IT now. So now we're saying, look, what we'll do, we'll give you an envelope of the 1.6 billion. If you've got an education program you want to roll out, give us your bid, give us your envelope. All right, you want 100 million of the 1.6, fair enough. Now, we'll just earmark that. So, at this stage, we promise not to give that 100 million to anybody else. So that's sort of earmarked for you, but we're not going to give it to you. We'll give you the first chunk of 10. Go away, show us what you're doing with it. Show me your data architecture, digital design, your customer lens. Show me my Domo or my feedback tiles on platform agnostic. So show me the thumbs up, thumbs down. Show me that the customers are actually enjoying the product. Great. Okay, well, here's another 10 mil. What are you going to do with that? And again, show me. It really is a delivery and performance committee that is oversighting the rollout of this. Is it perfect? No. Is it much better than before? Absolutely. And are we evolving? Definitely. So, We've just really started the journey. It's only 18 months, Maria, but it is far, far different to what it used to be.
That's remarkable. And also the decision making as to what could be built from scratch because it doesn't exist, all the way through to just buy it off the shelf because you can pay for it on a credit card. Often the temptation is, well, it's not perfect for our needs, therefore we need to customize, we need to build it just for us. So those sort of conversations must be difficult as well, because it's very easy in government and in large organizations to say, we're unique. So
yeah. Everyone says, oh, we're unique, but they're the tough discussions you have to have. And you honestly have to pressure test everything you hear. It's a culture change, but we're definitely doing that here in New South Wales, and I'm proud of the team.
It's wonderful. With all of this innovation that will be unlocked as you become this great, as you improve your focus on being a great customer, you become a magnet for talent. Now there are 1 million people in the Australian diaspora. All over the world. 300,000 have come home. We've got a survey in the market at the moment, and 20% of those people have indicated that they want to stay in Australia, and most of them want to stay in New South Wales, and they want to start businesses and they want to invest in businesses. There's also a significant proportion, about a third of them, not returning to their work overseas. Now, these are people who often are CEOs, senior management, at the forefront of the digital revolution, at the forefront of financial services. What is it that will unlock, how can we in New South Wales, and this is a model for other states as well, how do we attract that talent? How do we retain that talent? How do we encourage them to bring others from their overseas ecosystem back to Australia, physically or digitally? How do we make it a destination for great talent and business?
Well, I think there's two components to that. The first is you need to be bold in your vision, and we're very fortunate here with Premier Berejiklian, who gets this space, that understands the importance of New South Wales being a leader and therefore moving the country as well on this journey. And that's why she's recently announced Tech Central. We're doing the Aerotropolis, and there's so much smarts being put into this. So she gets it, and we are not shy in our ambition. Like, we are very bold. I don't want to say aggressive, but very bold in our ambition to be the world leader, or to be a world leader in the space. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you got to back it up. So it's one thing to have the rhetoric. I could give a soaring speech like Obama and just wax lyrical about where we need to be. But it becomes very empty. I become the emperor with no clothes if I don't have a track record of delivery. And that's why, here in New South Wales, we're lucky. We can be bold in our ambition, and we can be confident in that ambition, because I can give you 7 years of digital reform and the hard yards we put in place through the DAC, through Service New South Wales, through behavioural insights, through our response to COVID, et cetera, through the money we're putting into the fund, through our cyber, through the e-planning, through e-construction. There is so much happening. And people can say the rhetoric matches the reality. So next time they talk bold, there's a good chance they'll deliver on it. I want to be there. I want to be part of that future.
That's tremendous, particularly since there's significant competition for this talent. Singapore has made clear what it wants to be good at. Ireland, Israel, Canada, they've all marked out their territory. What would you like to see? And in Australia, when we go to the world, they don't see New South Wales, Victoria, but they see centres of excellence.
Yeah, true.
We have particular centres of excellence in computational linguistics, in conversational AI. What would you like to see New South Wales known for?
Oh, look, there's so many areas. It's like saying, who's your favourite child? But look, I'll start with cyber, because it's just, it goes to so many pieces. It's like cyber is the proverbial seatbelt or the insurance. Like, you cannot get in a car without putting it on or having it. And it goes to trust. And it goes to the geopolitical positioning of our great state and country, as part of the Five Eyes. So if I could get New South Wales to a position where we really are a leader in cyber, in addition, because cyber goes to AI, it goes to everything else in the digital space,
yes.
Then I'll be really, really pleased. And again, we've got the money for it. Nobody else is going to match us. No one is close to putting 240 in terms of our population over 3 years.
That's awesome. One of the things I've noticed in our conversation is your understanding of the transformation journey, your ability to get your head around what's required. That education process that you put yourself through, many executives now who did their MBA 10 years ago will have to rethink, how to prepare for this transformation. What was the journey you went on? What is it that you paid most attention to, and where did you look for inspiration?
Oh, look, to be honest, I'm lucky. I've got a great team here in my staff that I'm a humble student, so I learn from great people around me all the time, whether it's here in my staff, and I'm fortunate enough to I've got some great recruits, and even in the department as well. So I'm constantly learning from them. I don't sleep well, so in the middle of the night I'm listening to podcasts, I'm reading things all the time. I've just got an appetite for tomorrow and the next 10 years. It's just an ongoing journey. I used to be a lawyer by trade, so I had no idea about IT. And even when I became a Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, again, this was new territory. And even when I did my AICD course, I graduated a couple of years ago now, they just started to dabble into this world. So it's just a constant journey of learning.
And is there an international ecosystem that you model us on, or that you draw inspiration from? Look, I've been lucky because I've been a minister now for almost 10 years. So I've been fortunate to, in various hats, go around the world. So, when I was the Minister for Communities and Diversity and Innovation, I went to Israel. So I had a look at what their innovation ecosystem was. When I was the Minister for, in this ministry, I managed to get to Estonia and to Denmark and, to see what they were doing. I managed to get to England to see what they were doing. I've seen what the Valley's doing. So, I do go and, obviously in a COVID world, everything's, online, but I try and see what the best countries around the world are doing. I've been to Singapore. I've seen some of the great work they're doing. But we're very unique. Singapore's got their governance structure. We're not there. Estonia's got their governance structure and their peculiarity, given how close they are to Russia and their experience and their cultural history, and why they had to go so fast. So we've just got to make sure that we cherry pick all the best and try and model it into where we are on our digital arc. That's fantastic. And it comes back to the question of leadership. And that's where I think with all of this sort of work, you have to be bold. You have to lead. You have to spend political capital. You have to convince people within the organisation and outside that this is worth it. And the best way to do that is to show the thing. And that's what you've been doing by sharing all the news and standing behind your product. This has been a wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough. What you've done is you've given all large organisations, large complex organisations, distributed and consolidated, but also more importantly, those SMEs, those family businesses who are now confronted by a global digital competitor, you've shown them that we can all do this, and you're doing it in New South Wales, and you're giving New South Wales and those who want to look at it an opportunity to experience a better service. So thank you very, very much, Minister.
Well, thank you, Maria, and thank you for your leadership, and thank you for mentoring me along the years that we've known each other. I constantly look to you for guidance and counsel, so thank you.
It's a privilege. Thank you.